Welcome to Crossroads. The Chinese economy does seem like it's on the brink of collapse. I know we've been talking about this for a while. I want to show you the actual data and dig into it. Now look, before the COVID pandemic, the CCP's economy had already reached a downturn that it didn't seem to be able to pull out of. And it was beginning to cause, civil unrest even across the country. Tariffs and trade wars between the United States and China that started under the Trump administration, they're still continuing under the Biden administration. The CCP's real estate industry is going bottom up. Its high-tech industry is being crippled by restrictions on semiconductors and actually other policies as well. And with growing global tensions, Russia and Iran and other countries the CCP has become intertwined with, and additional tariffs on the table, and businesses now looking to so-called de-risk by pulling out of China. Well, you take all of this, and it seems the Chinese economy may finally be nearing its collapse. But look, is this really the case? Are there efforts to avert economic disaster? Are they working? Well, let's have a look at the actual details on this. Now, President Joe Biden recently gave an interview to Time magazine, and the topic of the CCP economy was brought up. Here's what Biden had to say. He said, everybody talks about how strong China is and how powerful they are. Name me. Would you trade places with Xi Jinping or any other country? Not a joke, I'm being deadly earnest, a rhetorical question. But would you? You've got a population that's considerably older than the vast majority of the youth in Europe, that is too old to work, and they are xenophobic. Where is it coming from? Where is it going to grow? You've got an economy that's on the brink there. And that's important because Biden says the CCP's economy is on the brink. And he continued by adding, the idea that their economy is booming, give me a break. Now look, Biden went on to note the CCP's military buildup and the extremely large amount of money that the Chinese Communist Party has been pouring into building up its military. And this is despite the fact they're facing real serious problems economically elsewhere. And then he noted as well, one of the CCP's attempted saving graces to save its failing economy, the Belt and Road Initiative, where the CCP is trying to do mega projects and infrastructure projects outside of China. Biden referred to that as a nuisance graveyard initiative. And he questioned, where is it breaking through? Now look, of course, if you just go by the CCP's economic data, you'll see they repeatedly cite 5% growth. They tend to always say about 5% growth. I'll be talking more about that, though, and the realities of the Chinese economy after a quick break.
Experts agree, one of the best ways to protect against financial uncertainty is to diversify your portfolio. Learn how physical gold and silver can secure your retirement funds from today's economic challenges with a gold IRA from American Hartford Gold. You can safeguard your wealth with no penalties or taxes when you transfer your current qualifying retirement accounts. Call now and our precious metals specialists will send you a free information kit, no cost or obligation. American Hartford Gold, a trusted industry leader with an A+ from the Better Business Bureau, has a 5-star rating from thousands of happy clients. Whether you are getting physical precious metals in a gold IRA or delivered to your doorstep, we offer only the highest quality gold and silver. For your peace of mind, we also offer a no-fee buyback commitment, a low-price guarantee, along with free shipping and free insurance. So don't wait. Call the number on your screen today and secure your financial future.
Welcome back. The Chinese economy may in fact have reached its brink. The CCP's economy right now is being shaken by trade wars, a falling real estate industry, and also businesses leaving the country as a form of so-called de-risking. But look, is the problem really as bad as it seems on the surface? Well, of course, if you just go by the CCP's economic data, the surface picture, you'll see they repeatedly cite 5% growth. Look deeper into that, and you realize that the CCP, well, they always tend to say that its economy is growing, and that's regardless of what the facts actually suggest elsewhere. This issue was raised in an opinion piece from Gordon Chang in Newsweek, where he also noted that the growing problems could even lead to military threats. Here's what he had to say. He noted Joe Biden's interview with Time magazine. He said, President Biden said in his May 28 Time interview that China's, quote, got an economy that's on the brink. And Gordon Chang says he's right. and we should care because Xi Jinping may try to solve his economic problems by starting another war. He says that at first glance, Biden's gloomy assessment looks wrong, right? The official National Bureau of Statistics reported that China's gross domestic product beat expectations by a wide margin, growing 5% in the first quarter of this year compared to the same period last year, right? In other words, if you go by the surface economic data and what they're saying on the books, they claim it's growing. But the problem is the CCP, again, always does that and even goes after people if they say otherwise. So what does the real data show? Well, as Gordon Cheng says, quote, "That's a slight improvement of the robust 5% growth for all of last year, but neither of these reports make sense." He said that, as Ann Stevenson Young of J Capital Research told me this week, quote, "I feel the numbers just don't mean anything anymore." And he added there is now a large gap between reported results and what we can observe. He says the widely followed Rhodium Group believes the economy, in China of course, grew about 1.5% last year. And he said that's in the ballpark of the now close to 2% a year that Biden reportedly told a group of Democratic Party donors in Park City, Utah last August. He notes that growth has almost certainly declined since then in China. And he said, quote, "China's economy is in a slow grind downwards." And he cites that to Andrew Collier of Hong Kong-based Orient Capital Research. And he added as well that startups are closing, no one can find a job, millions of people are paying mortgages on apartments that haven't been built, city services are closing down, it's a grim situation for Chinese people. And he cited that to Stevenson Young, who also added that, quote, "The sad thing about China is that the economic model has reached the end of its useful life, and there is nothing to do but change the model or incur great suffering." And that's important because remember, for the Chinese Communist Party, just changing the model, right? Changing the economic model, that's not really on the table. The CCP's economy is based on communism. This is the fundamental ideology of the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. If they were to change the model, that would mean changing the party itself. That's something they're not going to do because that would mean the death of the Chinese Communist Party. And so its attempts at a solution, they have not been to change the economic model. Instead of changing the model that's causing the problems, they're doubling down on the Chinese Communist Party model that is already not working. They're subsidizing things. They're going at things by hook and by crook. They're trying to rip off their trade partners with trade deals that benefit them and not their trade partners. And it's backfiring because other countries are starting to realize it. And even the Chinese people themselves understand that it's not working. And so they're getting their money out of China. They themselves are quote unquote de-risking. And there's also the fact the CCP is finding itself in a trade war with the United States. And that trade war now is not even just limited to the US. In fact, it's expanding to other countries. As other countries, even ones that are normally very favorable to the CCP, are beginning to realize they're getting the short end of the stick. Newsweek noted that Turkey announced a tariff on Chinese vehicle exports on Saturday, joining a growing number of developing nations seeking to shield local industries from perceived Chinese overcapacity. In other words, the CCP has too much product. They're trying to get rid of it. They're trying to sell it off. Now, on the surface, when you see the CCP trying to sell off goods because, again, they have an overcapacity, people say, oh, the CCP is racking up exports. They're increasing their exports. Isn't that a sign of economic success? Well, let's put it this way. If you're trying to get rid of your stock, if you're trying to get rid of the items on your shelf, does that always mean you're doing well? If a business has a fire sale, a going out of business sale, everything must go. Do you take that as them selling more goods, or do you take it as a sign of failure? Again, that's the problem the CCP is having, as this article states. They're trying to shield local industries from perceived Chinese overcapacity. It's a fire sale. They note the 40% tariff on, again, electric vehicles would target traditional and hybrid vehicles from China to increase the protect the decreasing share of domestic production. In other words, again, they're trying to get rid of their stock. It's according to, again, the Turkish Trade Ministry. It goes further. It says further in, the moves come amid heightened trade tensions between the world's second largest economy and the United States. Second largest economy, they're referring, of course, to the CCP, even though the CCP on the books is deemed a developing country. Between them, of course, the US and even the European Union, which have both accused Beijing of flooding markets with its heavily subsidized products to alleviate tepid domestic demand. In other words, they can't sell it in China. And because they have all these goods, hypothetically sitting on their shelves in China and nobody wants to buy them, what are they doing? Well, they're subsidizing it. The CCP itself is using the Communist Party system to, again, try to bail out the industries using, fake economic numbers and just printing money and so on. They're using that, subsidizing it, and trying to sell it elsewhere. Now, for the CCP, this is often the way they do foreign business. For example, the CCP might target a certain industry. They will mass develop a product, subsidize it through the Chinese Communist Party, and because they don't need to technically make a profit abroad, they use it as a way to do takeovers, basically. And so, for example, hypothetically speaking, with electric vehicles, the CCP subsidizes the market. They can sell the vehicles below the cost of their competitors. What happens then is that their competitors can't compete because, again, the CCP doesn't need to make a profit. It's subsidized by the party itself. What happens then is that the CCP's products are able to put their competitors out of business, or at the very least significantly damage the market for their competitors. And then once they reach that state, they again achieve market dominance, and they can even put their competitors out of business, and at that point then they can raise the prices. The problem for the CCP, though, is that other countries are starting to realize the game. The US, Europe, as this Newsweek article notes, are beginning to realize this is what the CCP is doing. Joe Biden himself is actually calling out the CCP for this, as are many other leaders around the world. Now, back to this article, it says that China denies it as an overcapacity problem and says detractors are trying to curb China's legitimate development, right? As they say, right? Further in, though, it notes that, interestingly, Chinese trade partners, countries normally favorable to the CCP, in the global south, right, South America and elsewhere, have joined the chorus of complaints about China's exports and moved to shield local industries. Because, again, they're starting to realize the game the CCP is playing with the economy. They're trying to shield local industries. And what does it mean? If the CCP is trying to export goods, what danger does that pose to local industries? Again, it's because of the game the CCP plays when it does this. It has massive exports. It subsidizes those exports. Because of that, they can undercut the prices and put local companies out of business. Governments are realizing that's what the CCP is doing, trying to gain market dominance through subsidized products. And even in countries normally, again, favorable to the CCP, as this article notes, the local governments are trying to, quote, shield local industries. They're trying to protect their local businesses from these hostile moves from the CCP. And they say that responding to a surge of Chinese steel, for example, Brazil, Mexico, and Chile have announced higher tariffs on the alloy in recent weeks amid fear that low-cost imports could cost jobs. Again, because they're trying to protect their local jobs and their local industry. Further in, it states that the European Commission, the European Union's executive branch, is expected to announce tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles this week after a months-long investigation. So they're pushing back. And by the way, the same thing's happening with the U.S. pushing back against Chinese electric vehicles. They note as well that in Guatemala, trade tensions with China have taken on an additional geopolitical element. They note that last month, Guatemalan media reported that China, Guatemala's second largest trade partner, had blocked imports from the Latin American country, including sugar, coffee, and macadamia nuts. Now, look, of course, those products also have all deeper meanings, all these things, in fact. The push into electric vehicles and that whole market, that was part of a Hail Mary strategy from the Chinese Communist Party. This goes back to one of the CCP's key slogans. if you understand the way the CCP promotes these things, their saying with that was, quote, surpass you at the turning point. And the theory the CCP had economically with that is that it's very hard to compete in existing markets. So they look at next generation technologies. This is why they're looking into artificial intelligence, why they're looking into medical products, why they're looking into electric vehicles and solar panels and wind turbines. Because for them, that's the next generation. And if they can gain a monopoly on that market and begin at the very root of it, undercutting competitors, gaining again monopolies over minerals and goods needed to construct these things, then they can control a future market. Even on the point, by the way, of green energy, Biden, even though his policies are heavily pushing again for that, he's actually pushing back against the CCP and the Chinese Communist Party's attempts to gain control of that market. Because again, other countries outside of China, they're understanding the game the Chinese Communist Party is playing and the way they try to, again, create global monopolies. Now, again, on the point of surpassing you at the turning point, the CCP has many different programs for this. Previously, they had a program called Project 863, and that was one of the main programs that was cited as guiding the Chinese Communist Party's programs for economic theft, the military cyber attacks, stealing Western technology. And the base root of Project 863 was that the Chinese Communist Party was aiming again for these next generation technologies because they wanted to control the next generation industries. The CCP has been trying to gain access to the high-tech industry. They want to get out of cheap manufacturing. And also on the issue of the food and the CCP's trade policies, for example, in Guatemala, because again, they're talking about sugar and coffee and macadamia nuts. The Chinese Communist Party has also been trying to become independent on its own food supply. But that initiative is also struggling because, well, the CCP is running out of arable land. The water is deeply polluted. And their ability to be self-sufficient on food is being hampered by the fact that a lot of their farming policies and otherwise have significantly damaged the environment in China. It's very hard for them to grow food. They tried getting out of that by moving to meat, for example. Pork and chicken and otherwise, but then they had swine flu and avian flu and other problems where the animals began getting infected because people believe it may be because of pollution, water pollution, ground pollution, and maybe bad feed for the animals. We don't really know the cause of it. Now there does seem to be a concerted effort on the CCP's end to cover up the facts on the true state of the Chinese economy. Because remember, on the books, they're saying 5% growth, and almost across the board, whether it's countries in Latin America, whether it's countries in Europe, whether it's the United States, whether it's other countries, they're not believing the CCP anymore. They're saying the CCP's economy is actually failing, despite the fact that on the books, the CCP is claiming otherwise. So what's really going on with the CCP's economy? Well, again, there is a program they have to cover it up. I'll be talking about exactly what they're trying to cover up, how they're doing it, and the censorship systems involved with this in the rest of this episode, which you can watch by clicking on the link in the description and joining us at epochtv.com. And if you want to find out more about the Chinese Communist Party's 100-year plot to defeat America, we have released a full investigative documentary uncovering their attempts to infiltrate and subvert the United States. The documentary is called The Final War, and it goes into one of the biggest issues that America is facing. You can watch The Final War exclusively on epochtv.com. Let me show you a trailer before we continue the rest of the episode, again exclusively on epochtv.com.
The greatest threat facing the United States is the CCP.
The Epoch Times investigation team had studied the CCP for years, but what we uncovered was yielding evidence beyond our imagination.
With Chairman Mao, with the Prime Minister, our talks have been characterized by frankness.
The Clinton administration said, oh, don't worry about it. This will be a poison pill for China.
China's strategic goal is to make sure that the U.S. has 4 enemies, and one of them must be a terrorist group.
We are giving of our life's blood so that the Chinese Communist Party can survive and thrive.